Joining us here today, our favorite bracketologist, JBR Bracketology, folks. If you don't already know what he did, who he is, what he does, he's not only the best analytical, best bracketologist out there. He's our guy. He's our buddy now. He's on every week for us. Actually, but we missed last week, so actually 2 weeks now. But go give him the follow at JBR Bracketology. Again, he's going to join here, talk about his seed list that he released on Monday. Again, guys, we had some games. We had some results last night that could change. And again, I kind of like to get him on after some of that to see how those seed lines change. But JBR, how's everything going, man?
Oh, going well. We got some snow here in the Mid-Atlantic last night, so it's a bit of a winter wonderland. But no, things are going well for sure.
All right, let's get into it. It's the last time we saw you. Let me pull it up on the screen. This is before we get into the stuff, the meat and potatoes that everybody wants to talk about here. This is his seed list from Monday. So on the 10th, February 10th, this is it. Obviously, we played games Monday. We played games Tuesday. We got games tonight. And obviously throughout the remainder of the week, some big ones coming up this weekend. But JBR, from really since you released this, again, some changes in other conferences. Clemson, North Carolina played the other night. We had 5 SEC games last night. Where do things stand, and how do things kind of, maybe if they do adjust, I'm sure they did a little bit from Monday's releasings to now as we record this on Wednesday around lunch?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest change was I now have Florida as my last 1 seed. We saw Tennessee fall on the road at Kentucky last night. Purdue fell at Michigan. And, Florida picking up their big win on the road at Mississippi State. They now have, in my opinion, the better overall resume than Tennessee. So Florida jumping up to the 1 line is probably the biggest singular move, and certainly something that most fans tend to direct their eyes towards right off the bat is, where do 2 teams stand at the top of the bracket? And then the other thing was Kentucky now has 5 wins versus my top 2 seed lines. That's 5 elite of elite wins, and several of them are away from home, including at Tennessee. They beat Duke earlier in the year. But no, Kentucky now with their collection of elite wins is really second to nobody in the country, including Auburn. Just in terms of the wins at the very top, right? I mean, Auburn's collection of quad 1 wins is unmatched, but Kentucky's wins at the very top is really standing out now. So I've actually jumped Kentucky from the top 4 seed, and I now have them as my top 3 seed, paired with Arizona's loss last night at Kansas State. So I think from the SEC, that's probably the biggest movers. We saw a couple of the bubble teams lose last night, Georgia, Vanderbilt. I think as of now, I still have those 2 teams in. They weren't necessarily bad losses last night, but every time you get one of these top dogs in the SEC, it's an opportunity to secure really a resume defining win. And so while the loss doesn't necessarily hurt, it's just one more opportunity that you missed out on to really elevate your resume as compared to the rest of the bubble. So, the concern as these SEC teams drop these, or, the SEC bubble teams drop these games against the top 5 or 6 teams in the SEC is, each one doesn't necessarily hurt, but when you start adding them all together, you create an issue of win percentage versus the field. Some of the things the committee is going to look at, because, different teams have a different quantity of opportunities, right? Some teams in mid-majors or even in the ACC, some teams only have 4, 5, 6 quad 1 games all season, 4, 5, or 6 games versus tournament at-large competition all season. So one of the things the committee is going to look at is your win percentage in the opportunities you had. We saw Oklahoma. I know they were in the Big 12 last year, but even though they had no losses outside quad 1, they had metrics that were in kind of the low to mid 40s. They had some big wins, but at the end of the day, their final record versus teams inside the at-large field was 2-9, and that was just too much for the committee to overcome, because they look at it and say, you had 11 opportunities to prove that you were a tournament team, and you lost 9 of them. So that would be my concern for some of these SEC bubble teams, is just your conversion percent in these opportunities. I mean, Georgia in particular, though, I will say their non-conference win over St. John's has aged really well.
Age like fine wine.
If St. John's wins the Big East regular season title, I mean, that's a win that's really going to stand out on the resume. But,
JBR, I was going to bring up the whole bubble for bubble with the five. I mean, tell me if you agree with me. I think we got 9 SEC teams you feel pretty good about that are in the NCAA tournament. Some not official locks yet. Then I think you got the 5 teams. Out of those 5 bubble teams, do you think is sitting in the best spot, and who is sitting in the worst spot out of those 5 teams?
That's a good question. The sound cut out, but I assume you're talking about Vanderbilt, Georgia.
Yeah, I saw Vanderbilt, Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas, and Arkansas.
I mean, Oklahoma is still sitting in the best spot as of now, just because of what they did in the non-conference. You know, I spoke a moment ago about Georgia's big win over St. John's, and you can say the same thing about Oklahoma's win over Michigan. Michigan now, after last night, is the outright leader in the Big Ten. I mean, having a win away from home over another power conference regular season winner really, really stands out on the resume. So, I mean, Oklahoma by default is in the best shape over those other ones just because of what they accomplished in the non-conference. You know, Vanderbilt did not play a very good non-conference strength of schedule. Neither did Georgia, neither did Texas. So, I mean, all of them are in a little bit of a trickier spot in terms of what they need to accomplish in SEC play. I think Texas probably has the best predictive metrics, but same thing, you know, Texas did not play a good non-conference strength of schedule. They did not pick up really any quality wins in the non-conference. So, you know, you are at the mercy of what you were able to get done in SEC play. Well, so Texas, I'm actually going to be, I have not shared this publicly yet, but I'm actually going to be at the Texas-Kentucky game on
awesome.
Saturday
in Austin.
I am looking forward to that. Yeah, I'm in town for a wedding, but was able to fit in a visit to Moody, and we'll
That'll be sweet.
Check out the Longhorns in person. So, I mean, if Texas wins that, they're in pretty good.
It's another massive opportunity for them.
It's another massive opportunity, and when you get these opportunities at home, you got to convert, because it's really hard to get them on the road. So when you get them at home, you got to convert.
Yeah, moving on to off the bubble here. Again, we got the big game this week. I mean, number 1, number 2, Auburn, Alabama, first number 1 versus number 2 matchup in SEC history, which it initially comes off, that's wild, but it's like, I guess not. You never really got Kentucky, Tennessee, or Kentucky, Florida. Those would be the teams you think, maybe Kentucky, Arkansas at one point. But to my point, this is the first time we've had this in this league. And I'm going to ask you from a poll standpoint, yeah, I think if Alabama beats Auburn on Saturday, Bama probably jumps to number 1, and they are in the coaches poll right now, but they've moved above 8 people. In your opinion, if Bama wins going into your seed line on Monday, is Alabama jumping Auburn all the way in the metrics from the number 1 overall seed from a tournament perspective, in your opinion?
I think it's going to be close. I don't have a definitive answer either way. Like, Auburn has enough of a lead that I can't say definitively Alabama would. But, you know, I think the margin of victory play a little bit. I mean, if Alabama ran them out of the gym, then I think that you'd have a hard time not putting Alabama at number 1 overall seed. I would also want to see what the resume metrics look like. Right now, Auburn is number 1 in all 3, and Alabama is number 2 in all 3. Does that switch? Does some of them switch? You know, I think every aspect would have to be kind of reevaluated and reconsidered. But I will say it would definitely be close. It would be very close.
Yeah, I thought it was just interesting. I mean, I think we know how the polls will shake out, but I just wanted to see how you'd answer that. Because, again, like you said, I think Auburn's got a decent-sized gap in the lead there. So I don't know if it's just one home win for Alabama would surpass them from that perspective. But let's go Tennessee, Florida. I mean, JBR, I watch Tennessee with my eyes, and I'm like, they just offensively have a low ceiling. And I think it is just, it really concerns me as it gets deeper into March. I mean, shot 16.8% from beyond the arc. We've seen them be worse than that at times. That's what scares me with them. Do you think the metrics are just going to stay there with them all year, similar to kind of like, I don't know, I feel like Alabama was a little bit like that last year. Remember, Alabama collected all those non-conference losses, but they weren't bad losses, so like the metrics never really hurt Alabama. Is that going to be Tennessee this year, you think, a little bit?
I think that's going to be Tennessee. I mean, they're always going to have a really good defense under Rick Barnes. We've seen them have inconsistent offenses throughout the years under Rick Barnes. But yeah, no, I mean, at this point, I think we've played enough games that you're not going to see a whole lot of movement in terms of the predictive efficiency metrics. You know, the sample size is large enough. And I mean, Tennessee has proven in enough games that they are a very good team. But you're right. I mean, the eye test wise, there are times where Tennessee is a brutal watch. Florida, meanwhile, just continues to impress me. I mean, I did not see this coming at all, and I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, and then, you know, somewhere along the line in mid-January, I'm like, I don't think the other shoe is going to drop. I think this team is legit. And I mean, all they've done since then is continue to prove that they are one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the country, no doubt about it.
No, you're right. And they got 2 massive back-to-back road wins at Auburn and then at Mississippi State last night. And speaking of Mississippi State, I feel like, you told me if I'm wrong here, JBR, I feel like going into that Alabama game about 2 weeks ago, that game they could have won at the end at the Hump in Starkville, it felt like they were kind of fighting for like a 2 to 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. Now it feels like they've lost 3 of their last 4, all 3 of them at home. Bama, Missouri, Florida last night. I mean, they won Ole Miss in overtime at home. I feel like, are they starting to get in that 7 to 10 range now? Is it kind of flipped on them like a 180 here? I mean, obviously they can still improve their way up. It feels like over a 2-week span, they've kind of been the biggest loser in the league a little bit from an NCAA tournament seeding standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different things that have hurt them. You know, like you said, at one point I did have them certainly on the 3 line, and I may have even had them as a low end 2 seed at one point in late December, early January kind of time frame. But, you know, I think Pitt's fall off has really hurt them, because when they beat Pittsburgh, the Panthers were like a 4 or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, you know, in my projections. And so at the time, that was looking like a really good non-conference win.
Yeah.
It has just completely fallen apart. So I think there were several things that were really helping Mississippi State from the non-conference that just really isn't a boon to their resume any longer. You know, I had them as a high-end 7 seed going into last night. I think they're probably going to be passed. I mean, well, they already got passed by Clemson from their big win Monday night over North Carolina, more so by margin than by quality, because North Carolina hasn't been particularly impressive. St. Mary's picked up a quad 2 win last night, and then UConn picked up a quad 1A road win at Creighton last night. So I think Mississippi State, even though their loss, you know, based off the quality of the opponent, isn't that bad, given that A, was at home, and B, you know, you're going to have 5 or 6 teams behind you winning games this week. I think Mississippi State is going to end up as an 8 seed. You know, predictive metrics have fallen too. I mean, they're now kind of sitting right around 30-ish in the predictive metrics, whereas, you know, a month ago they were more like number 20, you know. And those small things that I talked about, with the non-conference wins looking worse, right? The loss to Butler looking worse, the predictive metrics falling 10 spots, which has nothing to do with resume, right? That's independent of whether or not you win or lost. The predictive metrics have way more to do with, you know, how did you perform versus expectation. All of those things outside of just raw win-loss over the last month have combined to bring down Mississippi State's seed line by, you know, probably a seed and a half, if not 2, you know, because I think if Pitt was sitting there as a 4 or 5 seed and Mississippi State had a KenPom of 19 and a Torvik of 21 and a net of 20, they're probably still sitting right around the 5 line right now, you know?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, just a number of factors have really been working against the Bulldogs. And as a result, they're seeing their seed line drop.
Another team, the team that came out of nowhere this year, by far the most improved team, went from winless to now competing for a top 4 spot, in my opinion, in the league, the Missouri Tigers. What is kind of the ceiling seed line to you for them, JBR, and what's the floor?
I mean, I think the ceiling probably a 4 seed. I mean, if they could actually finish top 4 in the SEC, I think that they're looking at.
That's an automatic 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, probably. Yeah.
no worse than a 4 seed for sure. I think it's going to be hard to stay there. I don't have their schedule right in front of me, but by definition, to finish top 4 in the SEC, they're going to have to pick up multiple additional big wins. I mean, that road win at Florida was extremely impressive. I watched a lot of that game live when it happened. And that was the one time where I'm like, is Florida really that good? And then they reminded me from that point forward, yes, they are really good. But no, I mean, going back to Missouri, they're actually able to finish top 4 in the SEC. They're probably looking at somewhere around a 4 seed. If they can increase their predictive metrics, then maybe a 3. I mean, I think right now they're kind of looking at the low to mid 20s in their predictives, but I think realistically a 4 seed is their ceiling, and then a floor. I mean, it depends on how many games they lose, but I would say probably an 8 or 9 seed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at their schedule now, JBR, and like they're going to have a big say on who gets into the tournament out of those 5 bubble teams we discussed. I mean, they got Oklahoma tonight, at Georgia, Bama at home, at Arkansas, South Carolina at home, at Vandy, at Oklahoma again, and then they finish the year against Kentucky. So I mean, they play Oklahoma twice. They get Vandy, Georgia still, Arkansas. So I mean, they play a lot of those teams that are going to be in the bubble. So Missouri's definitely going to have a say in this. But you're right, like. Not a terrible. That's not. I mean, from an SEC, it's all relative.
Yeah,
like that's not terrible.
That's a very Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I mean, their minimum win probability in any of their remaining 8 games is only 47% per KenPom, and that's the home game versus Alabama. So you're right. I mean, they have a really good chance to win any of their final remaining 8. So I would say there is a good chance for as high as a 4 seed here.
Yeah, no, yeah, right. You look at that and you're like, again, there's no easy games for the most part, but like, yeah, I mean, it's not a bad draw compared to you go say what Alabama's got to end the year. Like, that's murderer's row from that perspective. But all right, JBR, before we get you out of here again, we appreciate you joining us, guys. Everyone go give him the follow at JBR Bracketology, folks. Remember, this segment is brought to you by our new title sponsor, FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/SECU to join today and get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet, folks. Again, last question before we get you out of here for this week, JBR. How many teams do you think get in as we talk on February 12th right now? How many teams do you think in the SEC make the NCAA tournament?
I'm going to say 13. I think
we're going to get to 13.
I think the bubble has largely worked in the SEC's favor in a number of ways over the last couple weeks. It's going to be close, but I would say as of today, I'm going to say 13.
13. All right. So I think 9. So you're saying 4 of those 5 you think are going to get in? 4 of those 5 like bubble-ish teams?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Georgia, Vandy, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas.
That's what I have that's what I'm thinking as of today, but that is subject to change.
Yeah, for sure. We got a lot of action coming up. Again, another almost back half of the SEC, a massive matchup, Bama Auburn this weekend. All those matchups between those 5 teams kind of fighting for those NCAA tournament bids will be good as well. But JBR, I appreciate you joining us, man. It's always fun. Again, guys, go give him the follow at JBR Bracketology on Twitter X. He is our favorite bracketologist. But JBR, if you have anything else to add, brother, I appreciate you giving us this week's update for your seed lines.
The only other thing I will add is that the selection committee reveal of their top 16 overall seeds is this Saturday, I believe at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. So that'll be, hopefully can get some interesting insight or tidbits from how this particular committee is, intending on seeding the field. So definitely tune in, or if not, I'm sure I'll be posting, my thoughts and my takeaways from what the committee does this weekend. But yeah, I'm definitely interested and eager to see how the committee sees things so far.
Yeah, I'm glad they do that now, but that's good. But yeah, any updates people want to go see, go check out JBR at JBR Bracketology on Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, when the committee releases their top 4 seeds heading into this weekend's action. But JBR, appreciate you joining us, guys, and appreciate you joining us for this segment with our favorite bracketologist. But guys, hey, you have a great rest of your afternoon.